Hello and welcome! Over the years, when I'm buying myself a new licensed game, it's usually because I like the licensed property beforehand, like with any of my SpongeBob or Star Wars games. However, there was this one time where I bought a licensed game just because the game itself looked really fun. And that game was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. Today's video is sponsored by us at 16-Bit Games. 16-Bit Games has a variety of mobile games available on Android and iOS. They're fun, fast action games designed with mobile devices in mind, which means they all look, play, and control well, no matter what device you have. Play them today for free from the links in the description below. To the rest of the world, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a licensed game based off of the Universal movie of the same name, which itself is an adaptation of the comic book series made by Brian Lee O'Malley. But none of that really mattered to me, because to me, all Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a classic 2D beat-em-up on my brand new PlayStation 3, and it's exactly the same as the other classic beat-em-ups that I used to love at the time, like The Simpsons Arcade and X-Men. And all I really needed to know is that if I keep mashing the face buttons and jumping and punching everything that I see, I'll be able to get to one of the 7 evil X's and win the stage, continue long enough, and I might just beat the game. But as I quickly figured out, if I was to go into the first stage with that attitude, especially on a new game and by myself, I'd have a better chance in trying to fight a boss. Your punches do very little damage, especially at the beginning, and you are limited to what combos and moves you can actually do. But eventually, as you're defeating enemies, you'll gain experience levels and most importantly, money, and you'll be able to buy and learn new moves and upgrades, and eventually as you're replaying levels and punching your way through them to get more money, get more levels, get more experience, you'll be able to handle even the largest of crowds and the most difficult of boss fights. This is seriously a game which does work best if you have more than one person, and the game mechanics are surprisingly easy that even the newest of players should be able to pick this game up and at least understand the gist of how to play it. But even then, there are a few levels at the end of the game which are long and arduous gauntlets. And I found, unless you replay a few levels and basically stock up on all the health items, you are going to have a very difficult time surviving. And normally I don't like grinding in my games, but Scott Pilgrim vs. the World's an odd exception, and it's mostly due to this game's amazing soundtrack. Anamaguchi made this game's soundtrack, and to this day is one of my favorite soundtracks in any video games, and it's a mainstay on my MP3 player since it's one of the few soundtracks which I actually spent money on. And on top of all that, we have Paul Robertson's beautiful art design. Its retro-inspired aesthetics matches surprisingly well with Brian's comic book style, and I really love the attention to details that he added in. My personal favorite thing to do is to go and find Scott's sister at all of the fights that you have. Small details like this just make this game an absolute blast to play and to replay, making the act of grinding a little easier to tolerate. But unfortunately, since this game is so focused on its combat controls, music, and everything else, it didn't have enough room to fit in the story. And as a result, the story is just there as a means to establish the romance between Scott and Ramona, and sort of showing how your side characters are just that, side characters, and are just second wheels to this whole romance thing. I don't really know if there was actually a way to go and fix it. Since this game is so tight and the combat is so focused, a more elaborate story, like a comic book story that's done in the same style as Gravity Rush, might have actually gotten in the way of the gameplay and potentially could have dragged it out. Whereas this is quick, funny, and to the point. I'm not certain if a better story would have helped this game, but I feel that there should have at least been something to sort of explain what's happening in between levels. Who knows, maybe even having a third or a separate little hub you can go to that explains things a little more. But honestly, as a game, I think Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a pretty good adaptation, even if the story isn't the best. Even though it does a pretty good job adapting the Scott Pilgrim series to a video game, it does an even better job being a tribute to the classic Konami style beat 'em up which inspired it. And there are just so many little references scattered throughout the game. It's just fun to see it. And Gideon's Lair, it's basically the techno drum from TMNT 4. It even has the little ankle biters that just pop out of the ground and does the little thing. It's incredible to play through. It's almost blatant at that point. It's hard as nails, and I just love playing this game. Now, this would normally be the time where I would recommend this game or not, and this would have been one of the easiest recommendations that I could ever give. But there's just one itsy-bitsy little problem here. You see, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World hasn't been sold in any digital storefront since 2014. And due to the fact that this game is a digital-only game, it means that there is no such thing as a used copy of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So unless you have made yourself a time machine and can go back in time and buy yourself a copy of this game, you're kind of out of luck unless you don't know somebody that has a copy or was able to buy it before 2014. I do hope that someday Ubisoft gets the rights to this property and re-releases this absolutely amazing video game adaptation onto newer gaming hardware. But until then, the only thing which you can actually buy from this game is the amazing game soundtrack. And as it's dawning upon me, I realize I've just wasted several minutes of your life that you're probably never getting back. So, sorry about that. I hope you have yourself a good rest of the day, and as always, take care. And don't forget to vote this Friday for what games you want to see us review for the 16-bit viewer special. The poll will be available on this channel's community tab. Links will be provided below.